In February of 2011, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, or the NCAA, signed a 14-year, $11 billion contract just to broadcast the men's Division I basketball tournament. So basically, what that means is they signed an $11 billion contract just to broadcast 3 weekends of basketball for the next 14 years. And to me, that's just ridiculous. In that same year, the ESPN signed a contract with BCS worth $500 million just to broadcast the men's Division I football national championship. And that's a combined $11.5 billion just to watch these college athletes compete at the highest level. I had one semester experience of Division II college football, and it was such a grind. Honestly, I felt like I should be getting paid. But my name is Jacob, and today I want to talk about whether or not college athletes should be paid. So, personally, I believe that college athletes should be paid, but unfortunately, I believe that not all of them should be paid because honestly, it's really just impossible. But some college athletes bring in more revenue than others, and some college athletes have bigger fan bases than others, and I believe those are the athletes who should be getting paid. So, if you're against college athletes getting paid, maybe today I can change your mind. So, who's affected by the athletes not getting paid? Obviously, the athletes are, but right now I want to talk about other people who are being affected who you might not think about. So, the families of the college athletes are being affected, and something you might not think about is the future families of the athletes who are they're being affected also. But something you might not think about is the broadcasting networks and the universities that the athletes attend. They are also being affected. So the families send their kids off to college to play a sport, and in most cases at the Division I level, they're hoping that their kid can move on to the professional level. So did you know that 86% of college athletes that are in college right now came from and live below the poverty line? The families of Division I athletes depend on them because this could be their way out, and because they came from poverty, they don't have the money. And there's been a lot of scandals of coaches gifting the athletes money because they need it to support them and their family. And in my opinion, there's really no need for these scandals if we find a way for these athletes to have some type of pay legally. So, during the Division I men's basketball tournament, a big conference like the Big 12 got paid over $20 million for their teams to compete in the tournament. Some obviously get paid more than others depending on how their teams play. So it's basically the schools are getting paid determined by how the athletes play. And so the athletes are bringing in more money for their schools, but they're not getting any of the pay, which that just seems very unfair. So if you go back to the $11 billion contract, I forgot to mention that it was signed with CBS. It's just an insane amount of money because it's caused by the athletes, but yet they're just not getting anything. So I've explained who's affected by the problem, but I would like to focus on more why this is a problem for the athletes specifically. So it's not like a small amount of college athletes are affected by the problem. Like I said, 86% of them came from poverty and are living under the poverty line right now. This number is way too high for a change not to be made. These athletes commit to play the sport at these universities, and that means that they have very little time to do anything else. Especially the athletes at the bigger Division I schools, and who play the more popular sports like football and basketball. Like football and basketball at these big schools is a year-round thing, and they practice year-round. And people say, well, they can just get a job or something like that, but they don't have the time like regular college students. According to Jake New, who wrote an article on the InsideHighRed.com, he interviewed some of the students from the Big 12, or the athletes from the Big 12 and the Pac-12 conference, and they said that they don't have a solution for the lack of money. And an athlete states, he specifically says, here at these big universities, we're treated like professional athletes. It's like our job. So you can assume that the athletes have little time on their hands, and I think we can all agree that if 86% of college athletes are living below the poverty line, then something has to be done, and it's a problem. So I would like to focus, personally, I would like to focus more on the athletes who play the bigger sports at the bigger Division I universities. The reason I want to is because this is where the main conflict is at. Because these are the kids who have the better chance of going pro, so they're the ones who spend all the time and they're devoted to one thing because that's where they're going to make their money at later in life. Now, people might say that why should these athletes be getting paid if they're on full scholarship? Well, you have to realize that, again, 86% of them came from poverty, so they didn't have the money to send their child to school in the first place, and these scholarships are the reason they're in college right now. So the fact that they don't have any money, and they don't, even when they have the scholarship, they still have to go to college and pay for things like food and needs, and they don't have the time to get a job like other students. So it's really just not fair, because other students have opportunities to get jobs and make money, but I just think these athletes deserve some type of pay. So now that I've explained the problem about the athletes not getting paid, I want to talk about two solutions to the problem. So the first solution to the problem is we take some of that $11.5 billion and distribute it to the athletes who are actually the cause of that money coming in. According to the NCAA website, there's over 460,000 college athletes. Now you may think it's impossible to pay all these athletes, and you're probably right. But if you take the athletes who play the bigger sports, the bigger Division I schools like football and basketball, that only leads 15,000 students. So, but if you take 1% of the $11.5 billion, that's over $100 million. But if you take less than 1%, we could still be paying these college athletes a decent amount of money. If you take $766,000 and you divide it by the 15,000 athletes, each athlete would be getting paid over $7,000, and that seems like a pretty reasonable number to me. But so you're telling me that if we can't distribute less than 1% of the $11.5 billion to the athletes who are actually bringing it in, like it's an easy solution. But if for some reason that solution isn't reasonable enough for you, another solution is letting these kids sign contracts and signing their uniforms and stuff, because it's like a reward. It's like any other job. You get a reward at a job for being the best at your job. You may get a raise or a bonus for being the best, and that's what you deserve. Same for these college athletes. But as I conclude here today, I hope we all agree that that college athletes getting zero pay is a problem, and I do believe they should get paid, but maybe not all of them. I know that if you were in this position, you would want somebody to help you, and maybe a simple email to the NCAA could help the problem. And if you have kids, or you plan on having kids, and your kid was in this situation, I know that you would want something to be done about it too, and you would want the best for your kids. So thank you.